Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Preston here from Bull City Reader, and welcome to this week's video. So today I'm doing a book tag, and I'm pretty sure that this is an original book tag. If I'm wrong, let me know down in the comments below, but I'm going to call this an original. I was looking at some book tags online, and I found a book tag where they created a list of books using their name. I thought that was neat, but I want to put a twist on it. I wanted to create a TBR based on my name. So I'm calling this the Your Name TBR book tag. So the rules are simple. I've come up with 2 rules that I can think of for this book tag. It's a fairly straightforward book tag. You take your name, in this case my name's Preston, and the first letter of the first word in each book must spell your name. Now I went a little bit hard on myself. If the title started with the word the, that was a T, and I didn't just ignore the word the and then move on to the next word, but you can do what you want if you would like to do this book tag. But so the first letter, the first word must be the letter, and also if you want to use a series name for the letter, the first letter and the first word of the series, you could also do that as well. So with that being said, let's jump into the Your Name TBR book tag. As I said, this is a TBR based on my name, Preston. So the first book is going to start with the letter P, and it's going to be the book Pack by Bockoven. Here is the cover. So I get emails each Tuesday, and in the emails, I get them from several different places. Some local bookstores, your Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and also just some online book lists that also tell you what's come out. And one Tuesday, I saw this cover in the email, and it really grabbed my attention. So I went to Barnes & Noble. They didn't have it. None of the stores in the area did. So I actually contacted the author before I ordered the book just to see if by chance I could buy a copy from him and get it signed, since my Barnes & Noble didn't have it. Lucky enough, he did have some that he could sign for me, and so that's how I got it. So the synopsis for the book reads, Cherry, Nebraska, population 312, is just off the highway between the sticks and the boonies. It's where Dave Rhodes and his friends have lived all their lives. They own businesses, raise family, pay taxes, deal with odd neighbors, and once or twice a month, just like their fathers before them, they transform into wolves. It's not a bad life, but when one of the group members goes astray, it sets in motion a series of events that will threaten to destroy the delicate balance that has kept Dave and his clan off the radar. Between a son getting ready for his first transformation, called the Scratch, a wife with sordid secrets, a new sheriff who knows nothing of the creatures in his midst, and a mysterious man in a bow tie with a shady agenda, the middle of nowhere is about to get very dangerous. So I thought the book sounded interesting, and I picked it up. So P in Preston stands for Pack by Bockoven. The next letter in Preston is R, and for R I decided to choose Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I've heard about this book from several booktubers, friends that I have online. Everybody that I know that has read this book absolutely loves it. It's in their top 10 or top 5 books that they've read of all time. For those that don't know what the synopsis is, I'm actually going to read it off Amazon because I believe Amazon has a better synopsis than what is on the back of this book. It's a very short synopsis and doesn't tell you too much. And I don't feel like the synopsis on the back of this book really even grabs you. So on Amazon it tells us that Red Rising, it follows Darrow. It says Darrow is a member of the lowest caste in the color-coded society of the future. Like his fellow Reds, he works all day believing that he and his people are making the surface of Mars livable for future generations. Yet he toils willingly, trusting that his blood and sweat will one day result in a better world for his children. But Darrow and his kind have been betrayed. Soon he discovers that humanity reached the surface generations ago. Vast cities and lush wilds spread across the planet. Darrow and Reds like him are nothing more than slaves to a decadent ruling class. Inspired by a longing for justice and driven by the memory of lost love, Darrow sacrifices everything to infiltrate the legendary Institute, a proving ground for the dominant gold caste. where the next generation of humanity's overlords struggle for power. He will be forced to compete for his life and the very future of civilization against the best and most brutal of society's ruling class. There he will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if it means he has to become one of them to do so. So, R in Preston stands for Red Rising. The next letter in Preston is E, and for E, I've actually gone with an indie author. I'm going with Ben Hale, and he wrote a book called Elseerian. I heard about this book on with a video podcast that I listened to. It's called Keystroke Medium. They interviewed him. I thought his story sounded interesting. His personal story plus this background on the stories that he told. So I then decided to get him on my podcast so I could talk to him a little bit more, learn a little bit more about him, and also hopefully introduce him to a new crowd. So what grabbed me about him is the fact he has created this big world, and he has right now it's 6 series. All 6 series take place in this world. But you can read each series in any order, really. It doesn't really matter, according to him, which series you read and when. But all of the series take place in this world. And I guess they tie together somehow. He calls what he's doing a timeline fantasy. They all take place at a certain time in his timeline. And actually on the spine of the books, he has, if I can get it to focus, right here, tells you where in the timeline the book falls. So I think that's kind of cool. I've never really seen a series do that, or a group of series tell you where in a timeline they fit. So I thought that was really cool. So this is actually the 4th series timeline wise, but it's the one that grabbed me the most. Here is what the synopsis for Elseerian says. The assassination of heroes was once a warning for an invasion that nearly destroyed the world. Nations were slaughtered, cities were erased from existence, and defending armies were crushed into oblivion. But the end did not come. Instead, the Black Horde vanished, leaving terrified survivors and rumors. As the centuries passed, the Holocaust faded into legend and finally myth. Across the southern sea, a gifted young man is completing his training. To him, the war is forgotten. To the world, a warning goes unheeded. And the killings have already begun. Kind of as with Red Rising, I have read a little bit of this book. Like I said, just some stuff came up. It wasn't for me at the moment. But I've really been eyeballing his books lately. And so, E in Preston is Elseerian by Ben Hale. So the next letter in Preston is S. And for S, I have chosen the YA thriller, I guess you call it a thriller, is Sadie. Sadie is by Courtney Summers. This is what the cover looks like. So Sadie I heard about from several booktubers. Let me read you the synopsis before I kind of tell you what grabbed me about the book. So the synopsis says, when popular radio personality Russ McCrae receives a desperate phone call from a stranger imploring him to find 19-year-old runaway Sadie Hunter, he's not convinced there's a story there. Girls go missing all the time. But as soon as West's boss discovers Sadie fled home after the brutal murder of her little sister, Maddie, he sees the making of something big and orders West to the small town of Cold Creek, Colorado to uncover what happened. Sadie has no idea that her story will soon become the subject of a blockbuster podcast. She just wants revenge. Armed with a switchblade, Sadie follows a meager set of clues, hoping they will lead to the man who took Maddie's life, because she's determined to make him pay for it with his own. But as West traces her journey to the darkest, most dangerous corners of big cities and small towns, a deeply unsettling mystery begins to unfold, one that's bigger than them both. Can he find Sadie before it's too late? As I said, I heard about this book through several booktubers. They all seem to really like it, and it seems to be getting good reviews. I also got the audiobook for it, and the audiobook is fantastic. I guess I should say I started reading this book right before after I had my dental surgery, and then we ended up going out of town, and I didn't get to read it for almost a week, and I picked it up, and I kind of just felt lost, so I just put it down. That's why it's still on my TBR. But the audiobook is amazing. So the chapters alternate between the podcast and Sadie. And so the podcast really does sound like you're listening to a podcast. They have introduction music. They have the narrator. When he talks as he's in studio, it sounds like he's in studio. When he's supposed to be interviewing somebody, it sounds like he's interviewing somebody. If he's on the phone with somebody, it sounds like he's on the phone with somebody. If the book, like there's one part, I won't be able to find it, but it mentions there's a baby crying in the background. There's a baby crying in the background of the podcast. And then you go to Sadie and she's narrating her part, and then back to the podcast. It sounds fantastic. And they have several different people doing the voices of characters. So, I mean, it just sounds like you're listening to real life. So if you're into audiobooks and maybe have an Audible credit, I would highly recommend this. What I've listened to so far has been really good. But S in Preston is Sadie by Courtney Summers. So we're coming down to the end of my name. The next letter in Preston is T. And for T, I chose This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Oppel. I read this book when it first came out in 2012. And I remember falling in love with this book, absolutely loving it, made my wife read it. Then it had a different cover. They re-released it with a new cover since then. Right before the second book came out, they re-released it with this cover. Had her read it, she really liked it, but I never read the second book when it came out. I've seen this on my shelf. I've been eyeballing it lately, so that's why I've put it on my list. This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Oppel. It says, in this prequel to Mary Shelley's Gothic classic Frankenstein, 16-year-old Victor Frankenstein begins a dark journey that will change his life forever. Victor's twin, Conrad, has fallen ill and no doctor is able to cure him. Unwilling to give up on his brother, Victor enlists his beautiful cousin Elizabeth and his best friend Henry on a treacherous search for the ingredients to create the forbidden elixir of life. Impossible odds, dangerous alchemy, and a bitter love triangle threaten their quest at every turn. Victor knows he must not fail, but his success depends on how far he is willing to push the boundaries of nature, science, and love, and how much is he willing to sacrifice. Like I said, I've been eyeballing this to read it again. I remember really enjoying it when I read it, but that was 6 years ago. I want to reread it and see if I still feel the same way today. So that's why T in Preston equals This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Oppel. The next letter in Preston is O, and this book I've talked about before in at least one or two other videos. I don't know if you would consider him an indie author. He's part of a small press. But O is Ordination by Daniel M. Ford. It's book 1 in the Palladian trilogy. The third and final book just recently came out. I did start reading this. When I was reading it though, my wife and I had an event that really affected us. It happened. We had a miscarriage. And the miscarriage just really affected me in reading. I actually didn't read for several months because of it. And I was reading this book at the time, was probably about 25 to 30% of the way through the book, and was absolutely loving it. I love his writing. The audiobook's fantastic. But let me tell you the synopsis real quick. It says, a country shattered by war. For generations, warlords fought bitterly for dominance in a land without a king, leaving a fractured, war-torn country plagued by thieves, slavers, and the servants of dark gods and darker magic. A fallen knight. Alistair Colburn, former Castellan of Windsjaw Keep, walks away from his privileged position and into self-imposed exile amidst the ruins he spent a lifetime creating. In the smoking remains of a destitute village, he finds an improbable survivor, a young girl named Moll. Reluctantly, he pursues the martyrs who leveled Moll's village and sold the villagers into slavery. He follows their trail to a town of pirates and fugitives and exacts a bitter and violent justice. This sudden act of bravery and righteousness draws the attention of jealous and angry gods, embittered warlords, a downtrodden populace, and awakens a very ancient power, a long-absent goddess of mercy. A legendary journey. Alistair is launched on a treacherous path towards his ordination as a holy knight of legend, a paladin, a savior of the people. But to fulfill his role, he and the unexpected allies he finds along the way must face the demonic, sorcerous evil that stalks the land, the wrath of gods and men, and his own dark past. Fantasy, as I've told you, is one of those that's really hard for me to get into. I'm intimidated by the words and languages they created, lands that I'm unfamiliar with. But his book, dare I say, to me, rivals Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson is so well known in the fantasy world. You just get sucked into his books when you start reading them. He has a way of just making you turn page after page after page to find out what happens next. And Daniel M. Ford does that to me. I remember when I read it, I needed to know what happened next. He just pulls you in just like Brandon Sanderson does. So if you're looking for somebody in fantasy, but yet you're a little bit scared to jump into it because of things like I mentioned, definitely check out Ordination by Daniel M. Ford, because what I've read of it so far is amazing, and I can't wait to jump back into it, pick it up, and read the entire trilogy, because I know it's going to be absolutely wonderful. So O in Preston is for Ordination. So we're finally down to the last letter in Preston, and that is N. And for N, I chose the book Nemesis by Brendan Reichs, I guess is how he says his name. This is the cover for that. I wish I could tell you that I had a cool story on how I found this book, but honestly, I was in Barnes & Noble walking around. The cover grabbed me. I read the synopsis. The synopsis grabbed me, so I bought it. I haven't read it yet, but let me read you this. Actually, you know what? I just have the store bookmark in here. Didn't get it at Barnes & Noble. Got it at a local bookshop. I know I saw it in Barnes & Noble, and then I saw it again in this bookshop. But anyway, that's besides the point. Synopsis of Nemesis is: it's been happening since Min was 8. Every 2 years on her birthday, the same man finds her and murders her in cold blood. And every time she wakes up in a clearing, alone, unhurt, and with all evidence of the crime erased. Across the valley, Noah is haunted by nightmares of murder and death, though he does his best to hide the signs. But when the world around him begins to spiral toward panic and destruction, he learns that everything he's been told is a lie. For the planet has a bigger problem, the Anvil, an enormous asteroid threatening all life on Earth, leaves little room for two troubled teens. Yet Min vows to discover what happened in Fire Lake and uncovers a vast conspiracy involving her entire sophomore class, one that may be even more sinister than the murders. It sounded interesting. You've got space, asteroids, a mystery, murders, conspiracy. Sounds like a good book. So N in Preston stands for Nemesis. So that's it, guys. That's the end of the book tag I created. The Your Name TBR book tag. As with all book tags, I want to tag a couple people. But before I do, let me know what you thought of the books I read. Comment down below if you've read any of them or if any of them sound interesting to you. If you would like me to create a TBR with your name, comment below that you would like me to and tell me your name or the name you would like me to do. I will see if I can create a TBR from the books that I have, and maybe I'll even look through my wife's books, even though we don't really read a lot of the same things. And I will try to create a TBR for you based on your name. So comment down below if you want me to do that. I'm going to tag some booktubers to do this book tag as well. I hope to see them do this in the future. I'm going to tag several. If you're not tagged but you would like to do the book tag, please do. And if you do, come back and comment with your link so we can check out your video as well. If I don't tag a booktuber that you follow but you would like to see the booktuber create the Your Name TBR book tag, let them know about it. Share the video with them. But so the booktubers that I would like to tag, I'm going to tag Beards and Books, Books for Life, Sam's Nonsense, Kylie A, Alex Black, Tell Her a Story, Bookish Paradise, and Chapter Kate. Those are some booktubes that I really like watching, and I would love to see them do this book tag. So if you're watching, I tag you to do the video. Once you do it, comment down below with your link so we can all go check it out. I can't wait to see what you create with the Your Name TBR book tag. Anyway, guys, I'm Preston with Bull City Reader. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, all that, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you want to subscribe, I'll throw the link here. If you want to check out another video, I'll throw that link here. Anyway, guys, I'm Preston with Bull City Reader. Keep reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Let's go edit this bad boy.